Rachel Whitmore closed the portfolio, ready to end the interview, when her assistant burst through the door, face drained of color. "You scheduled the wrong candidate. The one you need is waiting in the conference room next door." The man across from her, Marcus Reed, a black single dad, froze mid-breath, gripping his worn backpack like it might anchor him through the humiliation. He stood already apologizing for something that was not his fault. Rachel could have let him leave. She could have followed protocol. Instead, she rose from her chair, walked toward him, placed her hand on his shoulder, a gesture no one in the building had ever seen her make, and said something that left the entire floor stunned into silence. Rachel Whitmore had built her empire on precision. Every meeting started on time. Every contract was airtight. Every decision was made without hesitation. At 36, she ran Whitmore Group with the kind of cold efficiency that made board members nervous and competitors respectful. She did not tolerate mistakes. She did not indulge sentiment, and she certainly did not allow anyone to waste her time. That morning, she sat in her corner office on the 42nd floor, scanning the resume of the next candidate. The position was for a senior operations manager, someone who could high-pressure situations and coordinate across departments without flinching. She had already interviewed 4 people that week. None of them had impressed her. This one she hoped would be different. The door opened, a man stepped inside, and Rachel looked up from the file. He was not what she expected. He wore a jacket that had seen better years, carried a backpack instead of a briefcase, and moved with the careful politeness of someone who had learned not to take up too much space. His warm brown skin, close-cropped curls, and tired, watchful eyes marked him as a black man who was used to being the only one like himself in rooms like this. He looked tired but not defeated. There was something steady in the way he held himself, like he had survived worse and kept going anyway. Rachel gestured toward the chair across from her. The man sat down, setting his backpack on the floor beside him with the kind of quiet care people use when they cannot afford to replace things. She did not offer small talk. She never did. "Tell me about a time you handled a crisis under pressure," Rachel said, her tone flat and direct. The man blinked, then nodded. His voice was calm, almost too calm for someone sitting across from a billionaire CEO. "My daughter had a meltdown in the grocery store once. She was 4. I had 20 minutes to get home, make dinner, and get her to bed on time because she had school the next day. I couldn't yell at her. I couldn't rush her. I just had to figure out what she needed and meet her where she was." Rachel stared at him. That was not the answer she had been expecting. She had asked about crisis management, and he had told her about parenting. She waited for him to correct himself to pivot into something more professional. He did not. "So what did you do?" she asked, her curiosity overriding her irritation. "I knelt down and asked her what was wrong," he said simply. Turns out she was scared of the automatic doors. "So I carried her out the side exit. Problem solved." Rachel leaned back in her chair, studying him. There was no bravado in his answer, no attempt to impress her. He had answered her question honestly in his own terms, and somehow that honesty felt more solid than anything she had heard all week. She asked him another question, then another. Each time he answered with the same grounded sincerity. He talked about managing schedules, keeping promises, staying calm when everything fell apart. He never mentioned corporate strategy or profit margins. He talked about his life like it was a job he took seriously. Something felt off, but Rachel could not place it. She glanced at the resume again, frowning. The experience listed did not quite match the answers he was giving. She was about to ask him to clarify when the door opened without warning. Her assistant Claire stood in the doorway, face pale and eyes wide. She looked like she had just realized she had made a terrible mistake. Rachel felt a cold knot tighten in her chest. "I'm so sorry to interrupt," Claire said, her voice thin and shaky, "but there's been a scheduling error. The candidate for the senior operations position is waiting in the conference room next door." This, she glanced at the man, then back at Rachel. "This is Mr. Reed. He applied for the office support role. The interview was supposed to be with HR, not with you." The room went still. Rachel felt the weight of the mistake settle over her like a lead blanket. She had just spent 20 minutes interviewing the wrong person. The man, Mr. Reed, sat frozen in his chair, his face flushing red against his deep brown skin. He looked down at his hands, then at his backpack, then back at Rachel. He stood quickly, almost knocking the chair over. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice tight with embarrassment. I didn't realize. I thought. He stopped himself, shaking his head. "I should go. I'm really sorry for the confusion." Rachel watched him gather his things, moving with the practiced speed of someone who had learned to disappear when things went wrong. He did not argue. He did not demand an explanation. He just accepted the mistake as if it were his fault, even though it clearly was not. That quiet acceptance bothered her more than the error itself. He turned toward the door, backpack slung over one shoulder, and Rachel saw something in his posture that she recognized. It was the same exhaustion she saw in her own reflection some mornings, the kind that came from carrying too much for too long without asking for help. He was not angry. He was just tired, and he was leaving because he thought that was what he was supposed to do. Rachel stood. She did not think about it. She did not weigh the optics or consider the protocol. She just moved. "Wait," she said. Mr. Reed stopped his hand on the door handle. He turned back, confusion flickering across his face. Rachel stepped around her desk, closing the distance between them. She did not touch him this time, but she stood close enough that he could not simply walk away. "You didn't do anything wrong," Rachel said, her voice quieter than usual. "This was our mistake, not yours." He nodded, but he did not look convinced. "I appreciate that, but I should still go. I need to pick up my daughter from school, and I'm already running late. She has a doctor's appointment at noon, and I promised I'd be there." Rachel glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 11:30 in the morning. She thought about the way he had answered her questions, the way he had talked about his daughter with the same seriousness most people reserve for board meetings. She thought about the steadiness in his voice, the absence of excuses, the way he had stayed calm even when everything around him had gone wrong. She made a decision. "What if I told you there's a position that might actually suit you better?" Rachel said. "Not the one you applied for, something different." Mr. Reed looked at her like she had just spoken a language he did not understand. "I don't follow. You came here looking for stable work," Rachel said. "I'm offering you a chance to prove you can handle it. A trial period, office coordination, scheduling logistics, making sure things run smoothly when everyone else is panicking. It's not glamorous, but it's real work, and it pays better than what you applied for." He stared at her, and for a moment Rachel thought he might refuse. But then he glanced at his backpack, at the worn strap he had been gripping so tightly in his dark brown hands, and something in his expression softened. "Why would you do that?" he asked. "You don't know me." Rachel met his gaze and did not look away. "I just spent 20 minutes watching you handle pressure without flinching. That's more than I can say for half the people I've hired in the past year." Mr. Reed stood there weighing her words. Finally, he nodded. "When do I start?" "Monday," Rachel said. "9. Don't be late." He almost smiled. It was a small, uncertain thing, but it was there. "I won't be." He left, and Rachel stood alone in her office, staring at the door he had just walked through. She did not know if she had just made the smartest decision of her career or the most reckless. But for the first time in a long time, she did not care about the answer. She had done something that felt right, and that was enough. Monday morning arrived with the kind of tension that follows a decision made too quickly. Rachel sat in her office reviewing emails, but her mind kept drifting to the choice she had made on Friday. She had hired someone she barely knew, bypassing every protocol her company had in place. She had done it on instinct, and instinct was not something Rachel Whitmore trusted easily. By 8:45, the whispers had already started. Claire had mentioned the new hire to someone in HR, who mentioned it to someone in accounting, and now the entire floor knew that the CEO had personally interviewed and hired a man who had walked into the wrong room. The story had spread fast, twisting slightly with each retelling. Some versions made it sound like nepotism. Others made it sound like desperation. None of them made Rachel look good. Marcus Reed arrived at 8:58. Rachel saw him step out of the elevator, still carrying the same worn backpack, still moving with that same quiet care. A black man in a crisp but modest shirt, he smoothed a hand over his neat curls as he looked around the office like he was trying not to draw attention to himself, which only made people stare more. Claire directed him to a desk near the main coordination hub, a space usually reserved for junior staff who handled scheduling and logistics. He set his backpack down, pulled out a notebook, and sat down without fanfare. Rachel watched from her office doorway. She could see the glances, the raised eyebrows, the low conversations happening just out of earshot. She knew what they were thinking. They were wondering how someone like him had ended up here sitting at a desk he had not earned through the usual channels. They were wondering if Rachel had lost her edge. She turned back to her office and closed the door. She had made her decision. Now she would see if it held. The first day passed without incident. Marcus kept his head down, asked questions when he needed to, and stayed out of everyone's way. He did not try to prove himself. He just worked. By Wednesday, he had learned the scheduling software, reorganized the supply closet, and fixed a recurring issue with the conference room booking system that had annoyed people for months. He did it without asking for credit. He just did it because it needed doing. But the whispers did not stop. If anything, they grew louder. Rachel overheard two junior managers talking in the break room on Thursday afternoon. She had gone to refill her coffee and found herself standing just outside the door, listening to a conversation she was not supposed to hear. "I'm just saying it's weird." One of them said his name was Greg, and he worked in operations. She interviews the wrong guy and then hires him anyway. That's not how this place works. Maybe he knows someone, the other one said. Her name was Jessica, and she handled client relations. Maybe he's got some connection we don't know about. Or maybe she just felt sorry for him, Greg said. Single dad struggling to make ends meet. Pulls at the heartstrings, right? Rachel felt her jaw tighten. She stepped into the break room, and both of them froze. She did not say anything. She just poured her coffee, met their eyes, and walked out. The silence behind her was louder than anything they could have said. Friday morning brought the real test. Rachel was in a meeting when it happened, so she did not see it unfold in real time. She only heard about it afterward from 3 different people, each with their own version of the story. But the core of it was the same. A major client, the head of a logistics firm worth hundreds of millions of dollars, had arrived 30 minutes early for a 2 o'clock meeting. The reception desk had not been notified. The conference room was still occupied. The assistant who usually handled VIP arrivals was out sick. And the client, a man named Robert Brennan, who did not tolerate incompetence, was standing in the lobby looking irritated and ready to walk out. Marcus had been at his desk working through a backlog of scheduling requests when he noticed the commotion. He saw the receptionist panicking, saw the man in the expensive suit checking his watch, and he stood up. He did not ask permission, he just walked over. Mr. Brennan, Marcus said, his voice calm and even. "I'm Marcus Reed, Office Coordination. I apologize for the confusion. Your meeting was scheduled for 2, but I can see you're here early. Let me get you set up in a private lounge while we finish preparing the conference room." Robert Brennan looked at him clearly, weighing whether to be annoyed or impressed. "I don't like waiting," he said. "Understood," Marcus replied. "Give me 5 minutes. I'll make sure everything's ready, and I'll personally walk you to the room when it's time." Brennan considered this, then nodded. Marcus led him to a quieter area, offered coffee, and disappeared. In the next 5 minutes, he cleared the conference room, alerted Rachel's team, arranged for refreshments, and returned to escort Brennan exactly when he said he would. The meeting went smoothly. Brennan left satisfied, and Marcus went back to his desk like nothing had happened. Rachel found out about it an hour later. She called Marcus into her office, and he walked in looking vaguely concerned, like he thought he might be in trouble. She gestured for him to sit. "I heard what you did this afternoon," Rachel said. Marcus nodded. "I hope that was all right. I know I probably should have asked someone first, but there wasn't time." "You handled it perfectly," Rachel said. "Brennan is not an easy man to deal with. Most people would have panicked." Marcus shrugged. "I've dealt with worse. My daughter once locked herself in the bathroom 10 minutes before we had to leave for her school play. I had to talk her through unlocking the door while also packing snacks and finding her costume. This was easier. Rachel almost smiled. She did not, but the impulse was there. "You're doing good work," she said. "Keep it up." Marcus stood, nodded, and left. Rachel watched him go, feeling something she had not felt in a long time. Relief. She had made the right call, but the relief did not last. The following Tuesday, everything fell apart. Marcus's daughter, Nia, got sick at school. The teacher called him at 11 o'clock in the morning, and Marcus took the call at his desk. Rachel saw his face change, saw the worry tighten around his eyes. He hung up and walked over to Claire. "I need to leave early today," he said quietly. "My daughter's running a fever, and the school needs me to pick her up." Claire glanced toward Rachel's office, then back at Marcus. "I'll let them know," she said. Marcus left within 10 minutes. He did not make a scene. He just grabbed his backpack and went, but the damage was done. By the time Rachel returned from a client call that afternoon, the whispers had started again. "He's only been here 2 weeks, and he's already leaving early. Must be nice to have special treatment. I had to work through my kid's flu last month. No one let me leave early." Rachel heard the comments secondhand passed along by Claire, who looked uncomfortable delivering them. Rachel did not respond. She just went back to her office and closed the door. She told herself it was not her problem. Marcus had a right to take care of his daughter. Anyone with a shred of decency would understand that. But decency, she was learning, was not something people extended easily, especially not in a workplace built on competition and rigid expectations. For a black single dad like Marcus, trying to be fully present at home and flawless at work in a place like this felt like an impossible equation. Thursday afternoon, Marcus came in late. Not by much, maybe 15 minutes, but enough that people noticed. He went straight to his desk, set down his backpack, and started working without explanation. Rachel saw him through the glass wall of her office. He looked exhausted, like he had not slept in days. She found out later that Nia had been up most of the night coughing. He had taken her to the doctor that morning, waited 2 hours for an appointment, and then driven straight to the office. He had not called in sick. He had not asked for sympathy. He had just shown up and done his job. But that was not the story people told. The story people told was that the new guy, the one who got hired without going through the proper channels, was already slacking off. By Friday morning, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Rachel was in a meeting when it happened. She did not see it unfold, but she heard about it immediately afterward. Marcus had been called into a small meeting room by his direct supervisor, a man named Tom Willis, who ran the coordination department. Tom was not cruel, but he was a stickler for rules, and he did not like exceptions. When Rachel found out, she walked straight to the meeting room. She did not knock. She just opened the door and stepped inside. Tom looked up, startled. Marcus sat across from him, his expression carefully blank, his hands folded in his lap. "What's going on here?" Rachel asked, her voice cold and sharp. Tom cleared his throat. "Just a performance check-in, making sure Mr. Reed understands the expectations." Rachel looked at Marcus, then back at Tom. "And what expectations are those?" Tom shifted in his seat. "Punctuality, consistency. We need people who can commit to the full schedule." Rachel felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. She turned to Marcus. "Step outside for a moment." Marcus stood and left without a word. Rachel waited until the door closed, then turned back to Tom. "He's been here 2 weeks," she said. "In that time, he solved problems no one else bothered to fix, handled a situation with one of our most difficult clients, and shown up every day despite having responsibilities most of us can't even imagine. And you're questioning his commitment." Tom looked uncomfortable. "I'm just doing my job. Your job is to manage people, not punish them for being human," Rachel said. "If you have a problem with how I run this company, you can take it up with me directly, but don't take it out on someone who's doing exactly what I hired him to do." She did not wait for a response. She walked out, found Marcus standing in the hallway, and gestured for him to follow her. They walked back to her office in silence. She closed the door behind them and turned to face him. "I'm sorry that happened," Rachel said. Marcus shook his head. "It's fine. I get it. I don't fit here." "That's not true," Rachel said. "You fit better than most of the people on this floor. The problem is that they don't know how to handle someone who doesn't play by the usual rules." Marcus looked at her, and for the first time since she had met him, she saw something close to frustration in his eyes. "I'm not trying to break any rules. I'm just trying to take care of my kid and do my job, but it feels like I have to choose one or the other." Rachel felt the weight of his words settle over her. She thought about all the times she had demanded that people choose, that they sacrifice their personal lives for the sake of efficiency and profit. She had built her career on that belief. And now, standing in front of someone who refused to make that choice, a black father who was determined to show his daughter what responsibility looked like, she realized how hollow it sounded. "You shouldn't have to choose," Rachel said quietly, "and I'm going to make sure you don't." Rachel did not call a meeting. She did not send an email. She walked straight to the coordination department where most of Marcus's colleagues were gathered around their desks, finishing up the day's work. The room went quiet the moment she stepped inside. People straightened in their chairs, closed their laptops, turned to face her. Rachel Whitmore did not visit the lower floors often, and when she did, it usually meant something had gone wrong. She stood in the center of the room and let the silence settle. Then she spoke, her voice calm but firm enough to carry weight. "I want to address something that's been circulating around this office," Rachel said. "There's been talk about Marcus Reed, about how he was hired, about whether he deserves to be here. I'm going to settle that right now." She saw a few people exchange glances. Tom Willis stood near the back, arms crossed, looking uncomfortable. Rachel did not look at him. She kept her gaze steady, sweeping across the room. "Marcus Reed was not hired because I felt sorry for him," Rachel continued. "He was hired because I saw something in him that this company needs more of. Composure under pressure, the ability to solve problems without making them worse, and the integrity to show up and do the work even when the circumstances are difficult." She let that sit for a moment, then went on. "I made a mistake when I interviewed him. That part is true, but the mistake wasn't hiring him. The mistake was assuming that everyone in this company would recognize competence when they saw it instead of looking for reasons to discredit it." The room was still. No one spoke. Rachel could see the discomfort on some of their faces, the defensiveness on others. She did not soften her tone. "Marcus has a daughter. He's raising her on his own. That means sometimes he has to leave early. Sometimes he has to come in late. And if any of you think that makes him less committed to his work, then you're not paying attention. Because in the time he's been here, he's done more to improve the way this department runs than most of you have done in months." Tom shifted his weight, looking like he wanted to say something, but thought better of it. Rachel turned her attention to him directly. "And if anyone has a problem with the way I run this company, you're welcome to bring it to me, but don't punish someone for doing their job just because you don't like how they got here." She let the words hang in the air, then turned and walked out. She did not wait for a response. She did not need one. She had said what needed to be said, and now it was up to them to decide what to do with it. When Rachel returned to her office, she found Marcus standing outside her door, waiting. He looked uncertain, like he was not sure whether he should still be there or if he should have already left. She gestured for him to come inside. They sat down, and Rachel leaned back in her chair watching him. He looked tired, but there was something else in his expression now. Not gratitude exactly, more like cautious relief. "You didn't have to do that," Marcus said quietly. "Yes, I did," Rachel replied. "I hired you. That means I stand by the decision. If people have a problem with it, they can take it up with me." Marcus looked down at his hands, then back at her. "I don't want to be a liability." "You're not," Rachel said, "but I need to make sure you have what you need to succeed here." So let's be clear about expectations. You're in a coordination role. That means your job is to keep things running smoothly, handle logistics, and solve problems before they escalate. You've already proven you can do that. She opened a folder on her desk and slid a document across to him. It was a formal offer outlining his position, his salary, and his schedule. The salary was higher than what he had originally applied for. The schedule included flexibility for emergencies with the understanding that he would make up the time when necessary. "This is the official offer," Rachel said. "It's not a favor. It's not charity. It's the job you've been doing with the terms that make sense for both of us. If you want it, it's yours." Marcus picked up the document and read through it. His hands were steady, but Rachel could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he was holding himself together by force of will. When he finished reading, he set the paper down and looked at her. "I'll take it," he said, "and I'll make sure you don't regret it." Rachel nodded. "I don't regret it now. Just keep doing what you've been doing." Marcus stood, shook her hand, his warm brown fingers firm around hers, and left. Rachel watched him go, feeling something shift inside her. She had built her career on being untouchable, on making decisions without emotion, on keeping people at a distance. But standing up for Marcus had not felt like weakness. It had felt like the first honest thing she had done in years. Over the next few weeks, the tension in the office began to ease. People stopped whispering about Marcus and started working with him. He proved himself not through grand gestures, but through consistency. He showed up. He solved problems. He kept his promises, and slowly the skepticism turned into respect. One afternoon, a woman named Sarah from the client services team approached Marcus's desk with a scheduling conflict she could not resolve. She had been trying to coordinate a meeting between 3 executives in different time zones, and every option she found created a problem somewhere else. Marcus listened, asked a few questions, and then pulled up the scheduling software. Within 10 minutes, he had found a solution that worked for everyone. Sarah thanked him, and as she walked away, she turned back. "I'm sorry I doubted you," she said. Marcus looked up, surprised. "You don't need to apologize." "Yeah, I do," Sarah said. "I thought you got here because of some backdoor deal, but you're just good at your job, so sorry." Marcus nodded. "Thanks for saying that." It was a small moment, but it was not the only one. Over the following days, more people started coming to Marcus with problems they could not solve on their own. He became the person they turned to when things went wrong. Not because he had authority, but because he had earned their trust. Rachel noticed the shift. She saw the way people interacted with Marcus now, the way they included him in conversations, asked for his input, treated him like he belonged. And she saw the way he handled it with the same quiet competence he had shown from the beginning. He did not gloat. He did not demand recognition. He just kept working. But Rachel also noticed something else. She noticed the way she had started to soften. She caught herself smiling more often. She stopped checking her watch during meetings, stopped rushing through conversations, stopped treating every interaction like a transaction. She did not know when it had started, but somewhere along the way, she had stopped being so cold. One evening as she was leaving the office, she saw Marcus in the lobby, waiting by the elevator. He had his backpack slung over one shoulder, and he was checking his phone. Rachel walked over. "Heading out, Ma?" she asked. Marcus looked up and nodded. "Yeah, picking up Naya from her friend's house." Rachel hesitated, then spoke. "How is she doing? I know she was sick a few weeks ago." "She's good now," Marcus said. "Back to her normal self. Thank you for asking." The elevator doors opened and they both stepped inside. The ride down was quiet, but it was not uncomfortable. When they reached the ground floor, Marcus turned to her. "I know I've said this before, but I really do appreciate what you did," he said. "Not just the job, the way you stood up for me. That meant a lot." Rachel nodded. "You earned it." They walked out of the building together, and Rachel saw a small girl waiting near the curb, her hand held by a woman who looked like a neighbor. The girl had tight curls pulled into a high puff, and she was wearing a bright pink jacket. Her warm brown face lighting up the moment she spotted her father. When she saw Marcus, her face lit up even more. "Dad," she called, running toward him. Marcus caught her in a hug, lifting her off the ground for a moment before setting her back down. He thanked the neighbor, then turned back to Rachel. Nia looked up at her with wide, curious eyes. "Nia, this is Miss Whitmore," Marcus said. "She's my boss." Nia straightened, suddenly serious, and extended her small hand. "Good evening, ma'am." Rachel blinked, caught off guard by the formality. She shook the girl's hand, feeling something warm and unexpected settle in her chest, a snapshot of a beautiful black family framed right there on the sidewalk in front of her glass tower. "Good evening, Nia. It's nice to meet you." Nia smiled, then turned back to her father. "Can we get ice cream on the way home?" Marcus laughed. "We'll see." They said their goodbyes, and Rachel watched them walk away, Marcus's hand resting gently on his daughter's shoulder. Nia chattering about something that had happened at school. Rachel stood there for a moment alone on the sidewalk and felt something she had not felt in years. She felt lighter, less burdened, less alone. She thought about the way she had built her life, the wall she had constructed to keep people out, the belief that success meant never needing anyone. And she thought about Marcus, who had walked into her office by mistake and shown her something she had forgotten. That strength was not about being untouchable. It was about showing up even when things were hard. It was about taking care of the people who mattered. It was about being human. Rachel turned and walked to her car. She did not have all the answers. She did not know how to fix everything that was broken in her life. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was moving in the right direction. The weeks that followed were quieter. Marcus settled into his role, and the office settled around him. There were still challenges, still moments of tension, but they were manageable. People learned to adapt. They learned that flexibility was not the same as weakness. They learned that treating people with dignity made the work better, not worse. Rachel found herself thinking about Marcus's words more often than she expected. He had told her once that he was not just working for himself, he was working for his daughter, for the life he wanted to give her, for the example he wanted to set. And Rachel realized that she had been working for nothing but herself for too long. She had built an empire, but she had built it alone, and the loneliness had started to hollow her out. She did not change everything overnight. She did not suddenly become warm and approachable, but she started making small adjustments. She stopped demanding that people sacrifice their personal lives for the sake of the company. She started listening more, judging less. She started trusting that people could be good at their jobs without being perfect. And slowly the culture of the company began to shift, not because of a policy change or a new initiative, but because the person at the top had decided to be a little more human. And people responded to that. They worked harder not out of fear, but out of respect. They stayed longer, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. One Friday afternoon, Rachel walked through the office and saw something she had not seen in years. People were laughing. Not the polite, performative laughter of a corporate team-building exercise, but real, genuine laughter. Someone had brought in donuts. Someone else had put on music. The work was still getting done, but the atmosphere had changed. It felt lighter. It felt like people actually wanted to be there. Rachel stood in the doorway of her office and watched. She did not join in. That was not who she was, but she felt something close to satisfaction. She had made the right choice, and for the first time in a long time, she was proud of it. That evening, as she sat alone in her office reviewing the week's reports, she thought about the man who had walked into the wrong interview and changed everything. She thought about the kindness he had shown, the patience, the quiet strength, and she thought about the daughter who was learning those same lessons from him, who would grow up knowing what it meant to be decent and responsible and kind. Rachel did not believe in fate. She did not believe in signs. But she believed in people, and she believed that sometimes the best decisions were the ones that did not make sense on paper. The ones that required you to trust your instincts, to take a risk, to bet on someone who had not yet proven themselves. She had taken that risk and it had paid off. Not in profit margins or quarterly returns, but in something more valuable, in trust, in respect, in the knowledge that she had done something right. Rachel closed her laptop, stood, and walked to the window. The city stretched out below her, glittering in the fading light. She had spent years looking down at it, feeling separate, untouchable, alone. But tonight she felt connected. She felt like she was part of something larger than herself. And that she realized was